Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Welcome again to yet another UNCDF webinar event. We are having a series of webinars from the UNCDF Caribbean office, and all these are prepared to start a discussion or a conversation around key and pertaining issues in the digital financial ecosystem. My name is Edward Mafelano, and I'll be moderating today's webinar session on MSME's challenges and opportunities in digital finance sector in the Caribbean region. Today's session, we are focusing on the insights that have been authored by our consultant, Annie Butland, who is also a consultant on financial inclusion and policy harmonization. These insights examine the current landscape and identifies critical solutions to enhance financial inclusion for SMEs in the Caribbean region. In our webinar today, we are honored to have opening remarks from Bram, who is the program manager for the UNCDF DFS Forensics program, funded by European Union. And after his opening remarks, we'll have a keynote presentation by Annie, followed by a technical Q&A and reactions from our distinguished panelists. And our colleagues from TTIFC will deliver next steps as well as closing remarks for this session today. So ladies and gentlemen, without much to say, allow me to welcome Bram Peters to give us his opening remarks and introduce our panelists. Over to you, Bram.
Thanks. Ladies and gentlemen, and good morning for you, or most of you, afternoon for me, and I hope we managed to get some people elsewhere for who is evening. You may have expected my colleague Helen on this call during the opening remarks. She is currently on leave, and so I'm stepping in. So I have slightly less hair, but other than that, I think I feel capable enough to step in the shoes that she had left me to fill. I'm really delighted to welcome you to all to this technical presentation of the paper, which is titled "The MSME Challenges and Opportunities in the Digital Finance Sector of the Caribbean," which is a document developed and conjointly with the UNCDF Caribbean office, and obviously with a lot of partners who are here today. It offers a comprehensive analysis of your current landscape in the region, based on research and interviews with MSMEs and policymakers across the region. What it basically aims to identify is to identify critical solutions that can enhance the situation around digital financial inclusion for MSMEs specifically. And the objective of this webinar is to present the key findings of this paper, but I think more importantly and more interestingly is that we also discuss these findings and some of the challenges that are faced by MSMEs when accessing digital financial services. So through panel discussions, the webinar will explore some recommendations from the paper. And so today with that, we are also joined by quite a diverse group of stakeholders: MSME owners, financial service providers, policymakers, and academia. For that reason, I would like to acknowledge the attendance of the distinguished representatives of the different government departments across the Caribbean, and the EU delegation for the Caribbean region. And then we have academic staff and students from the University of West Indies, and our colleagues and other individuals, interested individuals from across the globe. And I would definitely acknowledge the colleagues from UNDP Accelerator Lab, as well as TTIFC, who have been partners in our work, not only for this particular paper, but actually for most, if not all, of the work that we do in the region. So we are really honored to have quite an esteemed panel of speakers with us today. Among them, as you've heard already, Annie Bertrand. So she will present the key findings of the working paper in a bit. We have Mark Pereira, founder of Z Labs in Trinidad, Phoenix Belfield, CEO of Mlajan FinTech, Dennis Augustine from the University of West Indies, and we have our colleague from TDIFC, Ms. Nishani Mohamed, who will provide their perspectives on the general MSME financing landscape in the Caribbean, and they'll deliver the closing remark for today. So I'm really confident with those people on the panel and in the room that we will have a very interesting session. And without further ado, I suggest we dive straight into the presentation and the discussions. Over to you, Annie.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Bram. Let me just share my screen. Can you see it on slideshow at the moment? You can see it?
Yes.
Yes, we can.
Wonderful. Excellent. Well, good morning, everyone. Today, I'm very excited to share the findings of our research since the Digital Finance for Resilience program started in the Caribbean in 2022. As most of you know, our program involves multiple interactions with communities, companies, regulators, through the implementation of various activities delivered via three main modalities. But I think most of you are familiar with the United Nations Capital Development Fund. Perhaps the most interesting distinguished factor between the United Nations Capital Development Fund and other UN agencies around the world is that the UNCDF can provide blended financing mechanism to the private sector directly. So on that note, the program we started in 2022 actually is a brainchild of Bram, who presented this program. He designed this digital finance for resilience program around the Asian countries, Pacific and African countries. And this is the program, the way we implemented in the Caribbean region. So we have first the policy accelerators, where we work directly with the central banks to help them define the regulations as well as licensing and supervision framework that is more conducive to digital financial inclusion without necessarily increasing risk to the overall financial system. The second main modalities we have is the FinTech Accelerator, where we work directly with the FinTech to address barriers to digital financial inclusion. And the FinTech Sprint, you may have heard about it. We launched one last year, which is fascinating because essentially what it does is like we identify, say, a government agency, and that wants to address a particular problem, and we help this agency define the problem more specifically. We help the agency scope it out in a way that it can be addressed by a fintech company. So then we launch a call for solutions, and then once we identify the right fintech company that can address the problem in a viable manner, then we act as the intermediary to facilitate dialogue between the two, because as most of you know, fintech companies and government agencies do not necessarily speak the same language. So we help with this dialogue to make sure that they can work together to co-design the solution that makes sense, and again, that can be implemented in a way that it's financially viable for the fintech company. And then finally, we support policymakers to understand the value of investing in digital financial services, products, as well as infrastructure. Hence, the purpose of this working paper that I want to share with you today. So the paper is called No MSMEs Left Behind, the Imperative for E-Commerce and Digital Economies in the Caribbean. So let me share with you the summary findings, starting with the context. So micro, small, and medium enterprises represent 90% of all firms in the Caribbean region. So they essentially offer a wide range of products and services to generate income, both in the formal and informal sectors. And what's interesting to note here is that in 2017, the IDB conducted a research and estimated that the size of the informal sector in the Caribbean ranges about between 35 to 44% of GDP. And that's huge. Imagine if all these informal businesses were able to access the international market or even the tourism market in the Caribbean region, because just before the pandemic, the Caribbean experienced 7 years of consecutive growth in tourism arrivals. So in 2019, we had 50 million visitors. That is 10 times our population in the Caribbean. It represents a huge market, untapped market for MSMEs. Meanwhile, we experienced 4 decades of declining economic growth in the Caribbean region. So what is happening? We have more people coming to our shore every year who are willing to spend more on our products and services, not only before they come, during their visit, but also even after their visit. And also the entire global economy is growing. So why are we so lagging behind? There are, of course, many factors that affect growth, and some of them are explained in the report, but we have sufficient evidence to claim that MSMEs are essentially have been excluded from the digital economy. So if we want to integrate the to integrate the digital economy, MSMEs need access to digital payments, both either in person or online. And we conducted financial inclusion surveys in different Caribbean countries, and we found that 80% roughly of MSMEs do not use digital payments to process transactions. So how on earth can we expect MSMEs to conduct e-commerce or to access visitors when we know that these visitors, international customers as well, like to book online or pay using cards? Also, we found that 75% of MSMEs do not have access to a business bank account. So what do the small and micro businesses do? Well, they use their personal accounts, either in a bank or in a credit union. But the credit unions are great, but the problem with the credit union in most Caribbean countries is that they are not integrated to the ATM network, nor the ACH network for electronic funds transfer. So if you live in the Caribbean, you know at 4 p.m. there's a huge lineup on the sidewalk, and that is not to get access to happy hour, but is often time for people to have access to their money over the weekend because the credit unions may not be open in some places. So this is a problem. And then also finally, another point worth mentioning is that essentially about 10 to 20% of the population, adult population, in the Eastern and Southern Caribbean region are essentially completely excluded from the current financial system. And about half of those that are included, they actually have an account in the credit union. So I just wanted to perhaps note importantly that these estimates are extrapolated from this research as well as financial inclusion surveys, but the data varies greatly per country. So it's important to keep that in mind along the way. So why are MSMEs excluded? So there are 4 main issues that I want to share with you. They are more in the reports. There are more details, so you can download it. Actually, I would ask my colleague, if possible, to share a link to the draft report for people to have access to it. But let me go through these 4 issues briefly, one by one. So the first issue is that in the Caribbean, the requirements to open bank accounts are really stringent for both individuals and businesses. So banks around the world must comply with international standards for KYC, know your customer. But the problem is that the bar is much higher in the Caribbean. Look, you can see on the slide some of the basic, the requirements that are requested by banks in the Caribbean. Just to put things in perspective, when I moved to London in 1999, I moved there to learn how to speak English, and I was going to be there for 2 months. And the first thing I did was to open a bank account because I lived in a hostel and I just didn't, my door was not locking and I just needed to have my money somewhere safe. And I opened a bank account. And a few years later, when I did my master's degree, I went to move, I moved to Sri Lanka for several months again, actually almost a year, ended up being a year. But I was volunteering to help rebuild the country post-tsunami. And again, I needed a bank account to transfer my student loans to Sri Lanka so that I can live normally. Why is it 20 years later in the Caribbean, my gardener, my trainer, my babysitter, the plumber who fixed the plumbing in my house, why is it that all these people want to be paid in cash? Well, they tell me that either they cannot open an account in a financial institution, or some of them, they say that it takes about a week to get access to their cash. So why is it like that? Well, many banks blame regulators for this situation, but in reality, the Financial Action Task Force, which is mandated by countries around the world to define the standards for KYC, they recommend a risk-based approach, and they recommend that for lower risk customers, the due diligence can be much more simplified. So all the that the banks need to do is to implement the risk-based approach, but in the Caribbean, it's not really implemented. Fortunately, there is technology that can ease the process. Some of them are listed here. Also, what we found that is critical, and this is where UNCDF has played an important role in the Caribbean, is that we bring together the financial institutions and the regulators in the room. We've done it before, like in the workshop, and it's fascinating to see. So the banks are saying, well, this is the regulators are asking that, and the regulators are saying, no, in our country, we have a three-tiered approach to KYC, and you can implement simplified due diligence. So this is just an example in Trinidad and Tobago. You can see the second tier in the middle. The regulation in Trinidad and Tobago say that for second-tier customers, you only need a form of identification. It doesn't say that you need to have a proof of address. And in the third tier, for considered higher risk customers, you need a proof of address, but they're not saying that you absolutely need a utility bill, because a lot of individuals don't have a utility bill. It says that it could also be other things like a hire purchase agreement or a credit union account. So this is just to give you an example that by clarifying guidelines for the risk-based approach, it enables the financial institutions to lower their requirements for customer due diligence. That brings us to the second point, second issue that's explaining why MSMEs are excluded from the digital economy. And that is that MSMEs are unable to acquire or maintain digital payment solutions. Either they're not accessible or sometimes too expensive. So first of all, if you live in the Caribbean, you know that international platforms like Airbnb or YouTube and payment processors like PayPal and Stripe are not readily available across banks and credit union. So we don't have data on this, but a lot of people using Airbnb in the Caribbean region actually have a bank account abroad. They don't, because these international platforms oftentimes are not integrated across all financial institutions. Of course, there are exceptions. There are some larger banks that enable this process. But if you have talent and you want to generate advertising revenues on YouTube, you think you can just go and sign up and just start generating revenues? No, because the YouTube platform is only accessible in Jamaica, for example. But the international paper processors like PayPal or Stripe, they are in some cases, again, accessible, but there are always penalties and additional requirements. Now, so what do the businesses that can have a bank account do? They need to have an online, if they want to have an online payment gateways, or if they want to have a point of sale device, they need to request a merchant account in their financial institution, because only financial institutions can provide access to the merchant account that allows you to process credit card from Visa, MasterCard. So the problem again is that the financial institutions in the Caribbean, they're not only conservative to open business accounts, but also even more conservative when it's about providing access to credit card processing to get access to a merchant account. So that's a challenge in the region. And then again, when it's accessible and you have access to a merchant account, the cost of maintaining the point of sale device oftentimes is extremely difficult, especially when you have a seasonal demand. When we have lower months, it's very hard to pay for to justify the cost, the fixed cost or the rentals cost of point of sale device. But fortunately, again, the situation is changing. We are moving on. And we have, for example, 5 years ago, when I consulted with financial institutions, banks in the Eastern Caribbean, many of them did not even have an online payment gateway to offer to their business customers. Now, the First Atlantic Commerce have penetrated the entire Caribbean market, and they are essentially across all countries and in most financial institutions. So essentially, the online payment gateways are available. In terms of online, the second point here, the online marketplaces, that's super powerful for the underbanked. This is an example. I can share with you an example that came out of our FinTech sprint last year. So the Ministry of Agriculture wanted to have the farmers to be able to access the market, the restaurants, the visitors, but also the local domestic market. And they wanted to have the farmers to be able to sell online. So OnQ designed an online marketplace where the OnQ has the merchant account with the financial institution. So OnQ can process the credit card payments and then disburse the money into the credit union accounts of the farmers. So that's a very powerful way of addressing the problem for underbanked that perhaps will struggle to have access to a merchant account anytime soon. And then the third potential interesting solution here is to have open financial account in a mobile wallet. In a digital wallet. And that's powerful because a lot of businesses, especially in the Caribbean, micro businesses, they operate their businesses not via websites, but via WhatsApp or via Instagram. So the mobile wallet can allow you to eventually use text to pay with buttons that can be shared so that payments can be made. Mobile wallets actually are super powerful for unbanked and underbanked individuals, not only to process transactions. If you can see on the left side, the mobile wallet can be used to have access to digital money or to have access to funds to be paid. But on the right side, you also have other financial services that can be accessible via mobile wallets. So, for example, parametric insurance. We have done a pilot in Dominica actually, and where eventually you can have the insurance that when an event occurs, let's say a hurricane, the wind speed reaches a certain level, automatically the payout goes into your mobile wallet. So imagine how powerful that is to accelerate recovery after a disaster. Also savings, we found that studies have found that oftentimes when you have a mobile wallet, when you can store your funds, there's a decrease into impulsive purchases. So that's probably true for everyone around the world, but also enables to save. And small businesses, to be honest, like a lot of them, micro businesses, they're not gonna use a computer anytime soon to manage their cash flows or to manage like the HR customers. Well, there are lots of business management applications now that allows micro businesses to manage their operations much more efficiently using their mobile wallet. And of course, smart contracts. We have great examples in the Caribbean region, especially in the agrotourism sector, where farmers historically, it would take months to get paid, but oftentimes now with the smart contracts, when a specific event occurs and to the network, then automatically the farmers can get paid. So it's super powerful. Anyhow, moving on to the third issue that explained why MSMEs are excluded from the digital economy is that these e-money issuers, the companies that can offer mobile wallets, they lack the legitimacy and opportunity to deploy their digital wallets. So first of all, there have been some uncertainty in the regulatory environment in the Caribbean. Actually, in some of the Caribbean countries, the legislation for e-money issuers did not even exist last year. Actually, in some countries, it's going to be released this year. So obviously, regulatory clarity will support and facilitate and improve legitimacy of e-money issuers. Now, the second issue here is that the fintechs struggle to open an account with the financial institutions. So this is really bad. So think about it. Like if e-money issuers, a company that has a mobile wallet, wants to open a bank account and cannot open a bank account, what's going to happen to safeguard the funds? Because imagine when you have a mobile wallet, the company takes the money cash and then issue the money into the digital wallet in a digital form. So the physical cash needs to be stored somewhere. This physical cash needs to be safeguarded in a safe space so that when the mobile wallet owner wants to have access to the money, it can be released automatically. So if the e-money issuers cannot open a bank account in a bank, where is this money going to be? So fortunately, in many countries around the world, this issue has been raised and the central bank allows these e-money issuers to open an account directly with them. So there's examples in the UK, Lithuania, Brazil, but also central banks in the Caribbean, fortunately, are increasingly interested in exploring that option. It's coming soon, I'm hoping. So, and then the third issue is limited economies of scale. So as you all know, fintech companies must invest heavily upfront into the technology to make sure that there's cybersecurity, make sure it meets the standards, the registration, the licensing. There's a lot of investment upfront that are required by the fintech companies. So if there is no opportunities for economies of scales, then obviously they won't be interested. And fortunately, in the Caribbean, despite the fragmented markets that we have, progress is being made to harmonize the licensing procedures across some of the countries. And also many islands are now exploring instant payment systems. So IPS, instant payment system, it's very powerful for financial inclusion because what it does is that the system allows the e-money issuers, as well as the credit unions, as well as the banks, to all connect into an interoperable system, and it allows the transfer of money to go among the different stakeholders, and that process is transferred instantly. So it's extremely powerful, especially in the Caribbean, because the ACH network in some Caribbean countries is owned by the banks. So the banks will not allow the credit unions or will not allow the e-money issuers to integrate to facilitate transactions. So extremely powerful. And obviously, government payments. Government payments is a huge opportunities to increase economies of scale. And that brings us to the last and final issue that I want to share with you. So in the Caribbean, historically had a low demand for digital payments, given that the value proposition is unclear. So we do, even though we have a few mobile wallets in most Caribbean countries, deployment is difficult and adoption is very slow. Most people don't understand the intangible opportunity cost of the cash economy. People are happy with their cash at the moment. You know, behavior change is hard. But if you compare, for example, the pain points in the Caribbean versus, say, in Kenya or in India, where people have to walk or travel for hours to have access to cash, the situation in the Caribbean is not like that. So if we want to increase adoption in the Caribbean, we need to increase the number of use cases. We need to increase the value proposition for the consumers. So government payments, as I said, is a great idea, because not only to pay for your driver license and things like that, but also to receive benefits. So we have explored the possibility, for example, in Trinidad and Tobago, with the Ministry of Welfare, to see if we can have social benefits being disbursed directly into mobile wallets. So that would obviously increase the value proposition for the users, and it will increase the adoption. So, but there are many other examples. Partnership can be done to increase complementary of financial products that are delivered via the mobile wallet. And of course, as I said before, if the system is interoperable, then it also increases the value proposition, because money can be transferred from different stakeholders. Okay, so I'll stop here. I guess one last slide is like, okay, how do we make sure that all this is happening? Well, there are key enablers for inclusive digital economy, and I'm not going to go through that because this requires another hour of presentation, actually a whole day of workshop. We use these key enablers that have worked in other countries to define a financial inclusion strategy. So we're doing that in Trinidad and Tobago. We're also doing that with the central bank in the Eastern Caribbean Currency Union. We look at the different enablers, and we help the stakeholders or the policymakers to identify priorities to increase digital financial inclusion. And that's it. Just leaving you with a call to actions. So two calls for action. So the first one is the Caribbean Digital Finance Alliance. So for inclusion. The idea of the Caribbean Digital Finance Alliance is, as opposed to, for example, a fintech association, is that in the digital financial sector, if we want to make a lot of progress, we need better collaboration between the private and public sector, as well as the donor community and the development community. So the idea of the alliance is that it brings all these stakeholders together, and it helps to define priorities and helps to do advocacy. And the Global Alliance for Digital Finance Association is there around the world to support the establishment of Digital Finance Alliance. So we are going to have a webinar on the 28th of August, where we have, the three first speakers on the left on the screen. You will see these people have established digital finance alliances across the different countries around the world, and they'll share their experience. And on the right side, we'll have stakeholders in the Caribbean to help us think it through. How do we make it work in the Caribbean? Because even though we can learn from the experience of others around the world, the context in the Caribbean is different. We actually have multiple islands together working. So how can we make it work in the Caribbean? So I encourage you to join us in this webinar on the 28th and to learn and engage on how we can make it possible. And then finally, my last call for actions, and then I'll stop here. We'll open up for question and answer, is that this report, hopefully my colleagues put it in the chat, the link to the report. The report, you know, we spend a lot of time and efforts to try to capture the root causes of the problems and potential solutions. But to be honest, this report is kind of, I mean, obviously it's boring because it's not really alive. What we want is to make it more interesting, we want to promote our fintech success stories. So we want to capture more stories. We want to inspire and foster knowledge sharing among the different solution providers. So please write to us, send us stories, send us insights, and we can integrate that into the report and making it way more interesting, way more alive, and share it to mobilize stakeholders so that we together can make a difference. So that's it for me. I'll stop here. Edward, over to you for the next step.
Thank you so much, Annie, for the insightful presentation. We have heard quite a lot of insights from you. I think three of the main insights that I've caught is problems with online payments, online payment solutions. I would like to acknowledge presence of MasterCard, one of our colleagues, partners from MasterCard. Daniel Drams is here. And these are some of the challenges that we can also look at to work together, as well as on e-money issues in terms of regulations. I want to share that as UNCDF, we have established a regional innovation hub with TTIFC, which also brings about conversations and discussions around the rules and regulations in the financial services here in Trinidad and beyond the Caribbean. So we invite all our partners and online participants here to this hub to attend and also be involved in some of the activities that happen there for us to be able to unlock these challenges. There's also an issue of low demand for digital payment services, slow adaptation. These are things that need behavior change and mindset change. So I wanted to highlight on those as well as also reflect on some of the activities that we are already doing as UNCDF in the Caribbean, but also emphasize on the need and the call of action to start thinking of bringing together digital financial experts in the Caribbean to start the conversation and bring forth these solutions forward. So at this juncture, I want to invite Dennis Augustine, who is also a representative from UWI, but also an entrepreneur himself. Dennis, if you can enable your mic as well as your camera, please have the floor and make your reactions to the presentation. So in your reactions, we want to hear from your experience what has been the most significant challenges in having access to digital financial services as an entrepreneur, but also what's your feel on the recommendations and key actions that have been proposed. Over to you, Dennis.
Well, thank you very much. First of all, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Oh, wonderful, wonderful. So the power has been out at my house, and so I've had to leave, and you'll see that I'm presently in the car so I can connect my phone to power here and have some connection. But first of all, I want to applaud the UNCDF for this initiative in particular. As Annie has mentioned, the Caribbean Digital Finance Alliance. When I arrived here 2 years ago, I'm a son of the Caribbean. I'm a prodigal son of the Caribbean. I was born in Dominica and spent most of my life in Canada. Of course, it was to give me a better life. My parents brought me there. But wanting to close the circle, I came back here to the region. I spent most of my life in technology entrepreneurship in North America. And when I came, I wanted to look around and I asked folks, what were the barriers to our progress digitally? And over again, what I heard was that we don't talk to each other enough, that we don't trust each other enough. And I think that some of the solutions to that are exactly the flip side of that, talking to each other more and to cooperate with each other more. And so initiatives like the Caribbean Digital Finance Alliance and the DX Alliance, which I've come here to found, I believe are that solution. I'm very happy that we at the DX Alliance right now have an MOU with the University of the West Indies, and so many of the UE students and staff were on this call here today. And I am happy about that because why? The issues that we face, the impediments that we face are intransigent ones that are their roots in history, hundreds of years of history. So it is rooted in history, it is rooted in a colonial history, it is rooted in technical challenges, they are rooted in legislative challenges, political challenges, economic challenges. These are complex issues. And I can think of no better place to help us integrate some of those issues than the University of the West Indies. And that's why we are partnering with the University of the West Indies to do the Center of Excellence there for digital transformation. And are really looking forward to welcoming the participants of the CDFA into that environment, because the solutions that we will find are not just financial solutions or legislative solutions, or solution architect solutions, but they are integrated solutions that we need to talk about all together. And so I think that this is an exciting time, that we are at a point right now where we can start to have some hope about us being ready as a region to make a change, because finally we are addressing some of the root causes of those causes of not cooperating and talking enough. And so we at the Alliance of Digital Professionals, at the DX Alliance, are looking forward to welcoming all of you and the participants at the Center of Excellence and working closely with the UNCDF. And I really want to applaud Annie for this work as we hope to cooperate together. And I see on this call as well many from the Alliance community, the folks working in America, in North America, in finance, and we have allies far beyond our shores as well. So I think we are well poised for success here, and I greet this report and the announcements of the Caribbean Digital Finance Alliance with enthusiasm and hope.
Thank you so much, Dennis. I would like to invite Phoenix. Phoenix is the CEO of Imlajan. And Phoenix, from your experience working in the... Yes, we can hear you. Can you hear us?
Absolutely.
So we would like to hear your experience working and also establishing a small business in East Caribbean region. What has been your experience so far, and what have been your challenges, as well as what would be your honest reaction to these insights here presented? Over to you, Phoenix.
Well, thank you very much, and pleasant good morning to everyone. And it's a privilege to be on this esteemed panel. I am awed by the caliber of presenters here, and even more so impressed by the paper "No SME Left Behind: The Imperatives for E-commerce and Inclusive Digital Economies in the Caribbean." For me, the paper offers valuable insights into the transformative potential of digital financial services in the region. And for us, particularly in the sector, the fintech sector, where our mantra is in being financially inclusive and providing that all-encompassing fintech solution for particularly small MSMEs. The paper and the presentation, the content therein really resonated with us, particularly in the context of the challenges and the recommendations for the sector and how some of those can be mitigated. We have seen the extent to which the usage and proliferation of mobile wallet services in other jurisdictions have reaped untold benefits. We're reminded of the M-Pesa experience, where M-Pesa generates about $26 billion in transaction in a year. We've seen commercial banks in the US come together and form Zelle, and that is taking a transformative agenda because of its ability to move between bank accounts. We've looked at Alipay and WePay in China and see how the ability to serve billions of transaction has helped the small MSMEs. And I think the intent of the paper is something that need not be underappreciated, because here we see a real opportunity presenting for us. It is not because we don't have the technology, we don't have the know-how. In some cases, we foresee really 5 major challenges within the sector. limited digital literacy. If you would have read the ECCB report, you would have seen the level of digital literacy and financial literacy in the OECS, and those metrics that have been used to evaluate all of the OECS countries. We look at infrastructure constraint, how reliable internet and the smartphones are. We've looked at, and Annie mentioned it earlier about, and not only Annie, but my colleague presenter also mentioned it, Augustine mentioned it about the trust and security, that we don't speak to each other. And so you may have solutions sitting right at your doorstep, but because there isn't that level of connectivity, and that is why the networking opportunity presents this grand opportunity for us to really come together and share ideas. And there's also the element of high transaction fees, which is why a mobile wallet, which is like 20 times cheaper to operate than the brick and mortar approach, brings untold benefits really to the sector. And that is why, for example, in the case of Emlaja, we work with the underserved communities. We work with the credit unions that have these legacy systems that are not interoperable. And as a result, it will be costly for them to be able to link with modern technology spaces and opportunity. And we provide that technology bridge. And of course, the regulatory barriers. For example, for us to operate in fintech or other solutions, because of how close we are, but how far we are from a regulatory perspective, we would have to be almost like registering any company. When it's insurance fintech, you have to literally be registering in every country when we have one common space. So these are real challenges that we're faced in the sector. But notwithstanding that, there are incredible opportunities that we can glean from being able to adopt this no MSME left behind approach. We can increase the market reach for all our market, our farmers, for our local producers, people that have local produce. Somebody from Trinidad or from Jamaica or from St. Lucia can buy from a local artisanal producer here in Dominica by just getting an online portal that has, let's say, for example, has the Emlaja plugin, and they can receive payments digitally. We can also enhance our customer experience, increase operational efficiency. These are some of the things that we don't consider when we consider the benefits. And when we look at it and we look from the case of, for example, like what is happening in the Kenya experience, you have one bank that does 96% of its transaction online. And that brings untold benefits in terms of operational efficiency to the space, the access to financial services. So all of this is going to really come together and to not leave any behind. It's not just about providing the solution. We need to also provide literacy training. We need to have infrastructure development. We need to bring it so that it's affordable to the average person. For example, in the case of Emlaja, we relish the possibility to onboard roadside vendors and people who have been on the side of the road, but they have not had the opportunity to open a bank account or to deal with the fees that are accustomed to that. And they come and they get a simplified solution, but something that is technologically relevant to them. And they are able to now tap into this untapped market that was previously before them. So the paper really gives us an incredible insight, and it provides, from my perspective, a compelling call to action to the stakeholders across the sphere as to how we can really drive economic and financial inclusion and growth. And we believe that, particularly in the case of a mobile wallet service provider, we are committed to bridging that divide by being a financially inclusive solution and to offer our solutions to credit unions across the OECS space so that they can now reach their members and provide those benefits. So kudos to Helen and team for the incredible work, and Annie for the incredible work that has been done on this paper. And we look forward to collaborating on many other fronts. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Phoenix. I would like to invite Mark. Mark is CEO and founder of ZLab, another fintech and also a small and medium enterprises based in Trinidad. But Mark, we would like to understand from you. We have heard different perspectives from August, Dennis, as well as Phoenix, especially grounded around the Caribbean. But you have experience working even outside the Caribbean. what is the experience that you have faced as an SME, but also as you have been trying to found as well as establish your business, and what do you think would be the best recommendations that you would feel will easily materialize and deliver impact quickly for the Caribbean region?
Thank you, Edward. Great question. First of all, I want to commend Annie, Jordan, and Chris on this paper because this is the new Bible for the new financial movement in the Caribbean. I don't think there was soil left unturned with the amount of research and coverage that this paper has. If we do adopt it, and we all within this call, I see a lot of fintechs and I see a lot of veterans in the payment space in the Caribbean and pioneers. I think if we all form under this alliance, the Caribbean will be a place that rivals, entities and fintech powerhouses like Singapore. So commendable, incredible work on this, and it's incredibly innovative. If there's any spots that are left undocumented, I believe through collaboration with all of us, we will find the solutions for the holes in it. So welcoming collaboration is a massive, I think probably one of the biggest things we should focus on. So for the back to the question, essentially for us as an MSME, if you want to know the problems that we faced, it's all in the working paper. Things like opening up a bank account, the risks that have been seen as from us as a fintech. But if I were to highlight one thing mainly, it's that I believe that we have a major gap in between the organizations that have the capabilities to implement solutions and the organizations that have the ability to implement these solutions. So or the really regulatory compliance. So if you kind of read between the lines, I'm talking about big major institutions which are highly bureaucratic and very slow to implement, and unfortunately in the Caribbean are not super digitally capable. However, you have the younger technologically savvy generations who are very capable but underfunded, and there exists a major gap because oftentimes you'd hear these big organizations threatened by the younger generations and the younger companies, but there's no framework in between. And what we really lacked in Trinidad and Tobago specifically was that regulatory sandbox, those innovation hubs that harbored young companies coming up. So that really did hinder us. And I'm saying that because that's what I experienced in foreign markets. My professional career actually started in Sydney, Australia, and Sydney, Australia are now one of the pioneering technology hubs around the world, had those frameworks, and financing was available through grants, debt finance, venture capital in abundance. And I wouldn't say that it's not available in the Caribbean. I think that it's just the means to which capital can be made available are not there. And that is due to the risky nature of banks without letting MSMEs get accounts to receive these capital. Also the lack of venture capital networks, specifically angel networks, to provide capital to MSMEs. So simply put, the financing is not there. But I think, as a plug for UNCDF, organically, that's where you've really benefited us, is providing capital to us as MSMEs. And to be honest, I think that the UNCDF has come into a place where it was like a desert and you've now made an oasis. So moving forward, I think this Caribbean Digital Financial Alliance being led by UNCDF is going to be one of the most impactful initiatives that can come out of the most of the initiatives that have happened over the last few years. So yeah, I think in the way that the world is going, it's moving towards transparency, speed, efficiency, collaboration, disruption. All these things are going to come out of this Caribbean Digital Financial Alliance, and I think this working paper will definitely spearhead a lot of these initiatives and give us, documentation as to what we really should be working forward. So I look forward to a lot of collaboration and working tightly with everyone in here, competitors and enablers. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much, Mark. I would like to inform everyone that the Q&A session is open, but also the chat button, the chat function is open. Feel free to share your questions, and we will let the panelists take a look at them and provide responses. Do we have any questions in the chat online? Perhaps you would want to speak. You can also raise your hand. We should be able to give you permission to speak and pose your question. Other than that, I think most of the comments from the Q&A are on the recording as well as on the document. These will be made available to everyone once we close off the webinar. We'll share a draft version of the write-up, as well as the recording of this meeting will also be shared. There are requests on Dennis. Your contact details are required. Please check on the chat, but we have also provided your LinkedIn profile to participants in case you get messages from them. I don't see any reactions in the chat as well as in the Q&A, but once we get any, we will actually respond to that and make a reaction to that. At this point, let me invite Nishan Mohammed. If you're available, please.
Hi everybody.
Hi Nishani. Welcome, and we would want to hear from you. What would be your reactions, especially on the key takeaways, but also we'll be honored if you give the closing remarks. Over to you.
Sure, no problem. Thank you so much for your time, everyone. I'm here to speak to you on behalf of the Trinidad and Tobago International Financial Center. And we have the agenda. We are a state agency under the Ministry of Finance, and we have the agenda to push towards a cashless society in Trinidad and Tobago. We have a that sits on three. One, the adoption of digital payments across the government. Two, we focus on the fintech enablement. And three, which I think is very dependent on all others that I just mentioned, is to drive financial inclusion in Trinidad and Tobago. And the MSMEs, they have been a key area of focus for us. Last year, in 2023, we did a national financial inclusion survey in collaboration with the UNCDF. And one of our major segments of the population that we looked at would have been the MSMEs. Some key challenges that stood out to us is that one, the very obvious, is that MSMEs are an underserved population in Trinidad and Tobago. And one of our key challenges that we saw is that MSMEs are a great challenge in accessing business bank accounts, as well as business registration. And this is mainly due to the fact that there's onerous documentation and onerous requirements sitting behind this. We saw that 77% of MSMEs lack business bank accounts. When we also looked at the findings from our survey, we saw from a usage and quality perspective, we saw that the financial products and services that exist within the ecosystem right now, they're not meeting the needs of the MSMEs. We saw that 86% of MSMEs do not accept digital payments. 4% of them are totally unaware of digital payments, and 10% of them are aware of digital payments. But to us, what stood out the most is the fact that cash still remains the dominant transaction method for those that still accept digital payments, right? So today the paper talks about what are the challenges that the MSMEs are facing in the landscape, in the financial landscape in the Caribbean, including Trinidad and Tobago. And what we've decided to do to overcome these challenges and to cross these barriers is, in collaboration with the UNCDF, we are crafting a national financial inclusion strategy. And this strategy is meant to cover all segments of the population and to increase financial inclusion and the adoption of digital solutions. So we have 3 objectives of our strategy that we are currently curating. And one of our objectives speaks specifically to the MSMEs of Trinidad and Tobago and the Caribbean by extension. So what we did is we got MSMEs to come sit in a room with us and tell us what are the challenges that they are being faced with so that we can create an evidence-based and a robust financial inclusion strategy. And our objective states clearly that we are going to work to enable MSMEs to easily open merchant or business accounts with the ability to accept digital payments, as well as to resolve any payment-related issues very promptly and fairly, which is very important. To achieve this, we are looking at some high-level projects, and one of those include we want to be able to enhance the compliance and incentivization to financial institutions to offer low-tier merchant or business accounts with simplified documentation, as well as number 2, which is to promote alternative payment options, which goes against the traditional point of sale machines, the linked machines, and something that enables MSMEs to transact in a cost-effective manner. Yeah. So coming out of this, I would say we have the challenges, we have the solutions. We just need to, I know my colleagues, we spoke about trust. Trust is very important. And we have many other projects within our strategy that seeks to promote consumer protection, which is very important to enable trust in the environment, as well as collaboration, which is very important, right? And I think that there is a lot of hidden potential within the MSME sectors. I mean, a central bank paper said that 95% of the registered businesses in Trinidad and Tobago in 2018 were MSMEs. What it also said is that MSMEs employs 200,000 persons. 200,000 is a huge amount of persons that are employed by MSMEs. And in 2009, this contributed to 30% of our GDP. So imagine what we can unlock by unlocking and unleashing those MSMEs that are left behind and cannot afford and cannot access formal financial services in our ecosystem. So I do look forward. Thank you for your time. I hope this was a very valuable session. We are available, all of us, we are available to hear from you, to collaborate with you, to hear what are some of the challenges that you face, and to help you to overcome some of the barriers. Yeah, so Edward, I'll pass it on to you now to close. Thank you.
Jan, thank you so much, Nishan, for such remarks. I see there are a few comments again from the chat that I also want to just read them out. Can I self-nominate for CDFA? Yes, you can. Please reach out to us through the email on eastern.caribbean@uncdf.org, and we'll provide more insights on that. As well as there was a question, I'm not sure if Annie, you would want to quickly touch on that. If we know any jurisdictions that have instant payments in the Caribbean, reacting to challenges in digital payment solutions in the Caribbean. I see there are comments that Barbados has, but also there are few selected credit unions which I would love to know that also have an instant payment solution. Maybe Annie, if you have any comment on that.
No, not any particular comment, but just to mention that we oftentimes say the Caribbean, but the Caribbean, there's no such a thing, because we have like 15 countries and that are completely different from each other. In the Eastern Caribbean, we have the Eastern Caribbean Currency Union that are regulated by one central bank, but I mean, I apologize if I sometimes use the word the Caribbean, because instant payment, for example, we have it in Barbados, we have it in other countries, but we don't have it in everywhere. So just to keep that in mind.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Annie. Anyone from the panel who would love to make a comment? Mark, is there any place where there's instant payments?
If there's any instant payments in terms of I can pay for something and immediately there's a business process that follows it.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, I would say First Atlantic Commerce. Chris Burns has done an incredible job at enabling online commerce and has enabled an ecosystem around him. And I could pay for my Digicel bill online, and my bill will be paid, and I don't have to talk to anyone and let them know that my bill has been paid, and my account will be topped up, or my internet will come back on if I haven't paid my bill. So yeah, definitely instant payments are coming through the card routes via MasterCard and Visa. However, there are other solutions that are coming up. No major mobile solutions in mobile application solutions in Trinidad at the moment, but I do also know that there's Penny Pinch in St. Lucia that are doing amazing things and have a lot of integrations. They also, I think, could benefit from this partnership as we can move interregional, but also leverage some of their insights and capacity as well.
Thank you. Before we close, there is a hand from one participant by the name the Contact Hub. I've given you the access to the mic as well as the video. Please, if you have any comment, feel free to talk now.
I had a question, but it was actually answered.
All right. Thank you.
And Edward, just before you close, maybe just a quick mention to thank, I acknowledge Jordan Hamilton, who also contributed greatly to the report, and also to Chris Byrne from First Atlantic Commerce. Again, First Atlantic Commerce has worked to, as Mark said, but to release their solution. But also, if you go to their YouTube channel, they have tons of videos and like tons of work that they have published to help us educate the population, the stakeholders, and the regulators. So just to shout out to that as well.
Thank you so much, Annie. And to close, I would love to thank all of you, our speakers, for your insightful contributions, and Annie, especially for the insightful presentation. Thank you. I would also want to appreciate our audience for their active participation. We have had insights as well as call for collaboration. I think in our next webinar, we will dwell much on this collaboration as we see how we can actually build up a Caribbean Digital Finance Association. So that'll be our next webinar on the 28th of August, where we'll set out the foundation for the Alliance. So colleagues, this concludes our webinar today on MSME challenges and opportunities in the digital financial sector of the Caribbean region. We hope you found it informative and engaging. Once again, thank you all and have a great day. Thank you.